not the typical Rug Delver list that you're familiar with, where it's Delver, Secrets, Nimble Mongoose, and Tarmogoyf. He's actually playing Grim Lavamancer and Chumne Nemesis in the place of Nimble Mongoose. So
Interesting.
a little different Rug Delver deck.
All right. Well, we are underway. Rug Delver gets to be on the play. That's always a pretty big boon for the deck to see a turn 1 Volcanic Island.
Yeah, Rug Delver really relies on sort of tempo and land disruption. So being on the play is huge here because it allows him to kind of get a threat onto the board, preferably Delver Secrets, and then sort of back things up with Stifles, Dazes, and Wastelands.
As you see there, many of those cards in his hand.
And, you know, Rug Delver is one of those decks, you know, I talk a lot to Chris Pakula, who's a huge proponent of Rug Delver, or at least he was in the past. And recently he started sleeving up Esper Blade decks, you know, red, white, blue. And he felt that the Rug Delver decks just couldn't compete with all the True Name Nemesis decks out there.
All right, so a lot of the combo pieces are in the hand for Tyler Wilkerson. He does have Omniscience, Brainstorm, a second copy of Omniscience, a pair of lands, and an Emrakul.
Can't make out that last card. It looks a little too shiny on camera.
Yeah. And we'll see. Just the free information, pretty helpful for Rug Delver there. And the last card actually is a one of Impulse that he's running.
So he's got a lot of ways to search for that last piece. He basically just needs a show and tell. But Delver's Secrets hits play here. And Taxing Probe, you know, a little innocuous card, but one of the more powerful cards in Legacy, just gaining information.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do see with Tyler's hand is he's close to having a combo, but he doesn't have any of his enablers yet. If he can find a show and tell, he can immediately show and tell Omniscience into play and Emrakul immediately, which that would be his hope.
And it's tough though when you're playing against Rug Delver, especially if they're able to play a Delver on turn 1. They really need that clock right away. Now the rest of the game is basically just a lot of deck manipulation and just making sure they can kind of keep disrupting your plays with cards like Daze, Stifle, Force of Will.
Yeah, the Rug Delver player really isn't incentivized to tap out at this point.
Yeah, he's got a perfect hand for this matchup too. He's got Daze, Spell Pierce, and Force of Will along with another Brainstorm. Or one Brainstorm, rather.
Well, we will see if Tyler can pull out from under the Delver Secrets. He's going to have to battle through a lot of permission, as you'd said.
Yeah, it's not a tremendous clock. It's basically you know, a 7-turn clock, but that combined with the amount of permission in Reed's hand is kind of difficult to fight through all of that.
Absolutely. So just a second land from Tyler and a pass back to Reed. He'll continue that clock of Delver Secrets. The chips move Tyler down to 14. So 2 turns of 7, as you had said, now taken care of. And if you're the Omnitel player, you can kind of expect this to be I would think to be a 6-turn clock. You know, usually those last few points are dealt by red spells at the end.
And the thing about Omnitel, unlike other combo decks like Ant or Epic Storm, it's basically, it is a combo deck, but it's a little more resilient or robust rather, because it's not as fast, but it gives up some speed for consistency as well as permission. You know, much like Show and Tell, it can play Force of Will in the deck. So it can fight through some counter spells, but it's going to take time for him to kind of set up the perfect draw.
Yeah, we do see 4 Force of Wills in the deck. In addition to that, he has 4 Cunning Wishes in the main. He can Cunning Wish for cards like Pact of Negation if he wants more offensive counter magic to fight with.
Yeah, so if he's able to continue to make his land drops, he can play around cards like Daze, and then it's just a matter of, can I play around Spell Pierce and Force of Will?
We see an end turn Brainstorm by Tyler. He's going to crack a fetch land, so he gets a reshuffle. You see he has found a Dream Halls, so that is one of the few combo pieces. That and Show and Tell are the 2 things that start the combo that are actually castable in the Omnitel deck.
Yeah, so, you know, Omniscience, obviously, you're probably unlikely to ever cast that card. So Show and Tell is pretty much your only way to get that into play. Our Dream Halls at 5 mana, it's actually pretty castable, particularly because he has cards like City of Traders in his deck and Ancient Tomb. And Tyler has plenty of basics. Actually, he only plays basic islands in his deck. He has a bunch of sack lands. He does have City of Traders and Ancient Tomb, but he's not really exposed to cards like Wasteland.
Another interesting thing on the permission side of things, Tyler does main deck a copy of Flusterstorm, which I believe he has drawn right now. So he actually has some of that counter magic setup he might need if this turns into a fight over a Show and Tell.
Yeah, so if he can, so there's an intuition, so that's another way you can find a Show and Tell. So that's actually great too, because he can cast it at the end of Reed's turn, and Reed will kind of be forced to either fight for that or let it resolve and then try to fight the Show and Tell on Tyler's turn. So either way, Tyler's still in it. He's setting himself up pretty nicely here. It's just a matter of whether or not he probably has a couple more turns here before Delver is lethal.
Yeah, I think it's when he's around 7 life is probably when he needs to start fighting. He maybe can start the fight at 4, but he probably can't dare to go lower than that.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's got to be concerned about getting burnt out by lightning bolt.
Well, there's that. There's, in addition to the lightning bolt, there's also the fact that if he gets into a counter war using force of will, that actually will start to eat his own life points as well.
Yeah, so you don't want to be at 4 when you have to use a force of will, drop to 3, and then lightning bolt finishes you off.
Exactly.
So it looks like he pondered. He did find, he still has this intuition on top of his library, and he also has a force of will, I believe, on top of his library. So another way that he can kind of force through spells. So it's going to be interesting to see next turn if he tries to cast intuition with 1 mana up. It'll allow him to play around days at least, and also he has that Flusterstorm, like you said.
Yep, so Tyler's still just going on, keeping with his game plan of attacking for 3 and beating. He's drawn another copy of Delver of Secrets. It's we'll see whether or not he even casts the card, whether he needs to increase his clock.
Yeah, because the thing you have to be cognizant of is, do you have enough blue cards to pitch the Force of Will? You don't want to start pitching your counter spell, like Daze or Spell Pierce.
Reed hits Tyler down to 10, and he's going to play another copy of Delver, going for that increased clock. This now almost certainly represents a 2-turn clock. He's shaved 1 turn off.
So still a pretty good spot for Reed. He's got basically 2 threats in play now. He's got 2 Days, a Force of Will, a Brainstorm that he could pitch to the Force of Will, and a Spell Pierce. So he could actually cast every permission spell in his hand.
Yeah, and this is where Delver of Secrets really is at its scariest in the Rug Delver deck. You know, as I'm someone who really likes playing the combo decks in Legacy. I will say that turn 1 flipped Delver followed by land go is really it's a bad place to be in as a combo player.
So again, Reed's not even going to bother casting Brainstorm to set up his Delver. He wants to make sure he has it to pitch to Force of Will.
All right, so we see an Intuition here cast for Wilkerson. And now some of the counter magic fight begins. He's going to Spell Pierce that. Almost, I would think, because he knows that Tyler still knows the last card of his deck. He pondered and kept the card on top of there. So by Spell Piercing, he's somewhat guaranteeing that Tyler's going to draw a dead card on the next turn.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting here, Tyler actually has, I believe, the Force on his hand. Yeah, I believe the Force might have been the top card of his library, but he can actually just hard cast Dream Halls right here if he wants to try to go for it. Obviously, it's going to be difficult now that Reed does have, double Days that likely won't resolve. I don't think Tyler has.
Yeah, he has 2 Days as end of Force, so if he goes for Dream Halls, there's actually a full 3 counter spells that Reed can use here.
Yeah.
Interestingly, if he had the Show and Tell, Reed would really only have 1 counter spell for it.
Yeah. So let's see what we have here. Oh, we're going to have an Impulse here.
All right, so it looks like this, he's going to have to go for it. He's going to try to, I would imagine, find that Show and Tell. He does not seem to get it. He hits Cunning Wish. I don't believe he has time to cast that anymore.
Yeah, so it looks like Reed's Delvers are going to be able to swing over and finish Tyler off. Tyler just doesn't have enough going right here. This is Tyler's main phase, I believe. So is that
That's Show and Tell.
So that is a Show and Tell, okay. So here we see a Daze.
Unfortunately, he did have to tap out, which means suddenly these Dazes are all hard counters.
Yeah, I believe he found it with the Impulse.
So Force of Will for the first Daze, but there's going to be a lot more counter magic coming from Reed. It's going to float a mana. And he'll Daze again.
Yeah, and with the second Daze here, Tyler really doesn't have any other options. He's got just the Cunning Wish, Dream Halls, Emrakul in his hand, so or he has the Omniscience rather in his hand, so not really much of an option there for Tyler. So Tyler's forced to scoop him up, and he loses game 1 to Reed Hartman, Rug Delver. So kind of what you'd expect, I think, particularly in game 1. Rug Delver is one of those decks. It's not really good against the True Name Nemesis decks, but it's really good against combo decks because of the sheer amount of permission that they have in their deck.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons I like the Omnitel deck, even though he lost that game there. As you could see, if he had found that Show and Tell a turn earlier and cast it with those 2 islands up, he actually would have been able to execute the full combo that turn. The deck is... I like how much offensive counter spells it can get in addition to its combo.
I actually don't think it's that bad of a matchup. I mean, Rug Delver, obviously they have a lot of permission spells, but because Tyler's not playing a lot of non-basics, he's able to actually develop his mana base enough where he can start playing around certain permission spells and, make cards like Daze and Spell Pierce dead. Unfortunately for that game, Reed just had too much board presence with Delver Seekers.
And Tyler Wilkerson, certainly a studied Omnitel pilot. He actually piloted this to a top 4 finish in the Legacy Open at SCG Orlando. That's the same weekend that he won the Standard Open with Mono Blue. So for a while, threatened to become a double champion.
Yeah, so definitely
Just falling short in the Legacy top 4.
Likes Mono Blue, that's for sure, regardless of the format, either Legacy
Lots
or
of
Standard.
island.
He's
Just
going to play
basic
islands.
island.
Yeah. And I like those players. I like the players that stick with a theme, regardless of the format. You know, and hey, I got to say, if you like islands, that's not a bad place to be. It's generally the best land in any format.
Well, so post-board, this matchup actually gets a little tougher for the Omnitel deck because the Omnitel, as opposed to Show and Tell, uses a wish board for its sideboard. It has very few sideboarding options for other games. It has 4 white ley lines, which it uses against the black discard suites that are brought in against it. But other than that, its deck is mainly a lot of one-ofs.
But honestly, the Omnitel deck, it doesn't really care so much about Rug Delver. It's going to do what it does no matter what. So
Exactly.
if it's all the pressure is really on Rug Delver. Like Rug Delver needs a lot of things to go right to kind of win this matchup, in my opinion. It needs to get a 1-drop threat. I mean, Reed has 3 copies of True Name Nemesis and 2 Grim Lavancers in his deck. If either of those cards were in his hand instead of the Delver Seekers, he probably loses that game. So, getting turn 1 Delver Seekers is really important for Reed in this particular matchup because having all those permission spells, not all of them are hard counters. Like cards like Daze, Spell Pierce, if Tyler's able to get a City of Traders or an Ancient Tomb, he can play around those cards pretty easily because Tyler can go off easily on turn 6 or 7 if he wants to sometimes if Reed doesn't have a turn 1 Delver Secret. So it really comes down to whether or not Reed can get a threat into play on turns 1 or 2 and then follow it up with the amount of permission that he has. After board, obviously, he's got Red Elemental Blast and Flusterstorm, so he's going to have more hard counters. But again, it really comes down to whether or not he can get a threat into play early.
Yeah, this is one of the things, there's that continuum of whether you want to be a fast combo deck or a resilient combo deck, and especially the mono blue combo decks in the format, things like Omnitel and High Tide, if you give them enough turns, they will push through a combo.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about this matchup. If Tyler's able to resolve his combo, unlike Show and Tell, where if he resolves his combo, there could be a chance that Rug actually just gets a creature into play that just trumps the creature that he shows and tell. If Tyler resolves his Show and Tell, he's pretty much winning. I mean,
he wins
nothing
on the spot.
Yeah.
There's no boarding in, Show and Telling in some other card like a Sower of Temptation or something like that.
Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about
game.
He doesn't have to worry about those kinds of cards like a Caracas or Show and Tell. Like if he resolves Show and Tell, he's going to win. So that's
Right.
kind of why people kind of prefer Omnitel to Show and Tell with some regards, because there are a lot of hate cards for that Show and Tell has to deal with that Omnitel doesn't have to worry about.
Yeah, so he's actually running right now in a sideboard. There's a couple alternate lines that you can run with the Cunning Wish package. He's running one of the more interesting ones. So a lot of times you'll see Cunning Wish for Eladamari's Call to go ahead and find Emrakul. He's running the one of Firemind's Foresight in the sideboard right now. It's a card that finds it costs a lot, but you don't ever cast it. It finds a 1 and a 2 and a 3 mana instant, and that's able to find a lot of the other pieces of the combo at that point. Firemind's Foresight can go ahead, and in the deck, it can find another copy of Cunning Wish if it needs to, and then in addition to that, it can find cards like Impulse or Flusterstorm or other things it may need at that point.
So it looks like both players are debating to mulligan here. Tyler, it looks like he's going to keep his opening 7, and Reed is debating, and this is the kind of situation where Reed has to kind of be a little aggressive here. It looks like he has a bunch of spells, but I don't know if he has a 1-drop threat or even a Tarmogoyf. So this is one of those situations where if you don't have a 1-drop or even a 2-drop, it's really hard for you to win, particularly if you're on the draw. You can't give Tyler enough time. So it looks like that's exactly what's happening here. He's going to be a little aggressive here, knowing that without a 1 or 2-drop, I'm just going to give Tyler too much time.
So I want to go back to one of the reasons to play Firemind's Foresight, just as it's one of the more unfamiliar cards. One of the things it does is that if you have a Dream Halls-based combo, it allows you to stock up with enough blue cards to continue casting the rest of your hand.
Oh yeah, because it lets you kind of rebuild. So even if you just have Omniscience and then Show and Tell, it lets you kind of rebuild your hand.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Tyler, plenty of options. Once he gets to show Omniscience in play, he's got plenty of ways to win after that point. But let's see if he's actually going to be able to resolve the spell through all of Reed's instance. After board, he's got to contend with three red elemental blast, 2 fluster storms. So, along with the dazes and all the spell pierces.
And we see one of those dangerous hands here for Reed that he's drawn. It's a 3-land hand. He has 3 spells, which are Daze, Surgical Extraction, and Misdirection. These are all cards that you'd like in the matchup, but as you said, the danger is there's no clock in his hand at the moment.
Yeah, without a clock, you can just give Tyler too much time to set up. Again, he really just has to cast a 3-mana spell.
Right.
So it's not that difficult to do through cards like Daze and Spell Pierce if you have enough mana. And so let's see if Tyler can actually, if Reed rather can actually get a threat into play to kind of pressure and force Tyler's hand.
A dangerous start for Reed. Tyler cast a Preordain and kept both cards on top, then proceeded to draw. Certainly suggesting that he is not far from already having a combo.
Yeah, it looks like he has a Ponder, a Cunning Wish, Enter the Infinites. It looks like there might be a Dream Halls in there as well, so along with another land. So he's got a lot of the pieces right here. Just a matter of whether or not he can find a little more help to kind of set up his board. He just needs to keep making land drops, basically. That's all he really needs to do right now.
All right, so turn 2, he's going to lay a fetch land. Not before cracking 8, he's going to Ponder. He's on top of the deck, Brainstorm, Preordain. I believe
that might be the Impulse.
So the advantage here about pondering with a fetch up is it allows you to keep anywhere from 1 to 3 of the cards. You can shuffle at will there.
Yeah, it looks like Reed just drew a land for the turn, so he's got a lot of lands in his hand, not a lot of action. It looks like it might be a Misdirection.
Yeah, he does have a Misdirection, a Surgical, and a Daze.
Yeah,
so he has some disruption, to be sure, but with this much time, Wilkerson may just continue to build.
Yeah, he's under no pressure to act, and that's what Rug Delver needs to do. Rug Delver needs to force the Omnitel player to act before they're totally comfortable to. And Reed's just not able to do that right now. So Tyler is more than happy to just keep adding lands to the board and getting to a point where he's got inevitability. So Tyler casts Preordain. He's debating whether or not he wants to keep both cards on top of his library. And both of them are cantrips, or I think one's an Impulse possibly, and one's a Preordain. So he's getting to the point where he's got just too many deck manipulation cards in his hand. So it looks like he's going to ship a card to the bottom.
Yeah.
He's going to keep a Preordain. No, he's going to ship both.
Both. Yeah, the question is, sometimes if you have time, you can Preordain into Preordain. It's a great play. I guess he feels a little pressure, or at least wants to try to just hit the card he needs.
Yeah, he's already got a Brainstorm in his hand too, so yeah, you don't want to spend every turn just cantripping, especially when you have so much gas already. You want to kind of, at this point in the game, I think he just wants to keep making his land drops.
Exactly.
Particularly with double Cunning Wish in your hand. I mean,
yeah, you can utilize the lands real well. Tyler is being careful to not crack his fetch lands unless absolutely necessary here, as an uncracked fetch land is, in a deck with Ponder, Preordain, and Brainstorm, it's certainly a valuable resource.
Yeah, and he does have that Brainstorm in his hand, so next turn, if he finds a land this turn, I think he probably just plays it and passes. Really no reason for him to do anything else. But he might have to dig for land here. Oh, no, he drew a City of Traders, so not sure he wants to put that in play just yet. He doesn't want to expose himself to Wasteland, but it looks like that is what's going to happen. And that's not the worst thing that ever happened, because he can still cast Cunning Wish. So if Reed does use one of the Wastelands in the City Traders, he can respond by casting Cunning Wish. Not a terrible play here. So.
Yep, and we will see that Reed, with plenty of lands, is going to go ahead and waste the City of Traders. We do see in Reed's hand there's a lot of permission being built up. He does have, in addition to the Misdirection, Daze, and Spell Pierce. Yeah, he just added Spell Pierce to that along with the Surgical. So he has 4 pieces of permission now.
And this is a dangerous spot, though, for Tyler, because if Reed does counter the Cunning Wish and Tyler allows it to resolve, he's got a Surgical Extraction in his hand that can take out those Cunning Wishes. Right. So if Cunning Wish does resolve, it gets removed from the game, so he can't actually target it with Surgical.
Right, and he can't. Right, so what he'll have to do at that point is he would have to just draw Enter the Infinite along with, so he still has an out if you get rid of his Cunning Wish. Normally they go for Release the Ant's Kill. What he'd have to do is draw the Enter the Infinite with Omniscience, Enter the Infinite his whole deck, then cast Emrakul, and then the next turn, his free turn off Emrakul, he'd have to cast a second Enter the Infinite to re-put a card back on top of his deck so that he would have enough time to lethal with Emrakul. but it does make things harder on him for sure.
So Tyler still with only 3 mana, and he draws an intuition for a turn. So now I think he has to brainstorm. He just needs to make land drops. Is kind of why I wish he brainstormed the turn before as opposed to play City of Traders, because City of Traders is just so valuable, but you really want to play at the turn you're going to go off, because it just allows you to play around so many of the cards in Reed's deck.
So now, after the Cunning Wish, he has a pair of intuitions. You can tell Tyler really feeling no pressure. He's just setting up for the perfect hand.
Yeah, so it looks like he's going to put 2 cards that he's not going to want to see again, and then I would crack that fetch land and ponder, and just you got to find land here. You got to make a land drop.
Yeah, him getting behind on land is one of the ways that Reed could actually get ahead of him.
And the concern for Tyler, though, is are you going to expose yourself to wasteland? Because obviously he wasn't under pressure, but suddenly he's just not drawing land anymore. So I'm not going to say it's bad for him, but he obviously needs to kind of keep developing his mana base. So Reed draw a brainstorm for the turn. Let's see if he can find him some action. Really probably needs a Tarmogoyf here.
All right, brainstorm's gonna be cast for Reed. In response, Tyler's gonna go ahead and go crack a fetch land.
Yeah, and I think that was basically a little concern about Stifle. You know, you're not sure if Reed still has the Stifle in his deck anymore.
Right, and he wanted to crack that. I think he wanted to do it on Reed's turn. And so this way, if Reed casts Stifle, it will cost Reed a fetch land to do it.
And I don't think he has a brainstorm, but it looks like he has a ponder and a preordain. So not actually able to cast any of the card draw in his deck, in his hand right now. So yeah, he's definitely playing around Stifle now. And the thing is, you have to wonder whether or not Stifle's even in Reed's deck after board. It's not particularly good against Omnitel.
No, it's really only good at getting fetch lands. We see both fetch lands now cracked for Tyler. Looks like he'll be going for perhaps an impulse here. And now the Reed's brainstorm is allowed to resolve. So he finds another copy of Surgical. This brainstorm, remember, is really a strong one because of Reed's hand was lacking action. He had some uncracked fetch lands. He still didn't find any action.
Yeah, a pretty bad brainstorm because he wasn't able to find a threat. I mean, obviously he's got 2 sack lands, so he's going to be able to get some of the lands in his hand on top of his library and shuffle them away. But yeah, obviously, ideally, he wants to draw either a Tarmogoyf or Delver there.
Yeah, he needs a way to win, and he doesn't have one yet.
And this is the problem with Rug Delver in this matchup, is that you really, if you can't get one of those 1-drop threats into play, it's kind of hard for you to win. And that's kind of why I like, if you're going to play Rug Delver, that's why I like playing Nimble Mongoose, because True Name Nemesis is terrible in this matchup, and Grim Lavamancer is not very good either. So you probably can't even keep some of those cards in after board. So
you can't board down
the
to
number of threats you have. Yeah, the number of threats you have. It's like True Name Nemesis is almost like a non-card in this matchup.
Yeah, you could never tap out for it. I suppose you may just have to keep in Grim Lavamancers.
Yeah, which again is so bad for you. So after board, you just have very few threats. Which is why Nimble Mongoose is actually good, because it comes in play on turn 1, and it can be an actual reasonable threat on turn 4.
With a fresh deck, Wilkerson untaps and draws. He's drawn another City of Traders for the turn to have some more mana available to him.
And you know, he's playing very aggressively because it looks like he's just going to go for it here, but he's really under no pressure to go for it.
Well, what I like about casting Dream Halls here is it's not really going for it. It's just, you know, this is getting rid of 1 counter out of Reed's.
But you expose yourself to Surgical Extraction. That's the real problem.
On Dream Halls? He's probably okay with Dream Halls getting Surgicals.
I wouldn't be happy about it. I mean, not only do you expose yourself to Surgical Extraction, so your Dream Halls are gone, which is one of your combo pieces, but you also give Reed perfect information now. Because he's probably not going to pull the trigger on a Surgical Extraction on anything else. But now he gets to know exactly what your hand is, and now he knows exactly what he needs to do for the next few turns. And that's the huge thing there.
Well, if Surgical is just being used as a Jataxian probe, I'll go with the counter that Tyler can't stop Reed from casting Surgical.
But it's not just a Jataxian probe. He's removing 4 of the weight of your combo pieces. I mean, it's obviously not as effective as Show and Tell Omniscience, but right now, it's a major piece of his combo. I mean, that was, he doesn't have a Show and Tell in his hand, and he doesn't even have an Omniscience. So he's the number of cards left in his deck that he can draw to kind of get his combo going are limited to 4 now. And you really can't afford to let anything else, you really, you're under a lot of you're not under a lot of pressure because Reed doesn't have a creature into play, but again, he was under no pressure to cast Dreamhost there. He could have easily just cast Preordain or Ponder and just kept developing his mana base.
It's because of the wasteland on the table. So the way to play around that is to wait and cast Dream Halls on 6 or 7 mana, so that at least you're getting multiple dazes when you try to cast it.
No, but
you do.
he played City of Traders this turn, as
Right.
opposed to casting Ponder or Preordain to just find another
find an
basic
island.
land. And there's a wasteland in play. So if your Dream Halls doesn't resolve, which I don't even think he expected it to resolve.
Absolutely not.
You basically
knew it
just
was
lose
getting
your City
countered.
of Traders, and now you're left with only 3 mana. And
So you have
again,
to look for another basic there.
yeah, you have Ponder and Preordain. There's no reason not to just keep trying to develop your mana base with your islands.
All right, well, we are back over on Reed's side. He's just drawn a Force of Will for the turn.
And again, no threat here. So, Tyler is not in terrible shape just yet, but he still doesn't have that combo piece, and he doesn't have that much mana to work with either.
He's got an island. He's going to, and now with plenty of cantrips, he's going to start reloading.
Yeah, so it looks like he has intuition, so he has a way to find the omniscience.
Yeah,
And he already has the ender.
Now the worry about, he probably can't intuition for omnisciences because he's had his Dream Halls surgicaled. You can't let your Dream Halls and your omnisciences get surgicaled.
Yeah.
So you can't intuition for that combo.
And that's another reason why going for Dream Halls there was pretty rough. But he doesn't, again, Tyler doesn't know that Reed has Surgical Extraction. However, that is a card that Rug Delver decks play. So given he was under no
once
pressure.
you see one, I would expect that he has at least a second.
Now he knows that there's something going on. But even though he didn't know it the first time, you have to, knowing the format, Rug Delver is a popular deck. There are people that play it in their sideboard. If you're under no pressure to cast Dream Halls there, why not just continue to develop your mana base and then go for it when you have permission or you can play around other cards?
We see a 4th land into play for Wilkerson. He's now has a Force of Will, so he's trying to build up a counter spell assault of his own. You see a Cunning Wish in his hand.
And that's another thing. You can't. Now he has to make sure that his Cunning Wishes never get countered, because if he can get that Cunning Wish Surgical Extraction.
He can still win if his Cunning Wish is surgical. That's
that's true. Yeah, because he just goes for the infinite.
he just needs to get to cast and enter the infinite. That's why he can't let his omnisciences get surgical, because you need omniscience or Dream Halls in order to cast an enter, or you need like all the islands in your deck, which is unlikely to work.
So it looks like Tyler is going to cast Intuition here. What is he going to go for?
Yeah. So let's see what he grabs here. It looks like he's going to grab Show and Tells.
I think he might have an Omniscience in his hand. He might have gotten it last turn. Those are some pretty sweet Show and Tells.
Yeah, so and that is it. Yep, he's going to go ahead and grab Show and Tells off it. If these Show and Tells get surgical, he's going to have to cast he's going to have to cast Omniscience the hard way.
Well, you better start drawing those Ancient Tombs.
All right, he did that main phase. Now, he does have Force of Wills to fight over the surgical.
Yeah.
A Force of Will. But, I mean, that's a fight, especially when he's tapped out, that I don't think he particularly wants to fight. Now Daze is actually a spell again. Granted, his opponent doesn't have it, but...
So, yep, he knew about the Surgical Extraction, so I'm assuming he had a plan here. And looks like, yep, he is going to get the Surgical Extraction to Show and Tells.
So Show and Tells and Dream Halls are both gone ways to cheat cards into play. Have been taken out of his deck.
So good news for Reed. He doesn't have to contend with Show and Tell or Dream Halls anymore, and he finally drew a threat in Tarmogoyf. So
that's going to be hard for Tyler now.
Yeah, suddenly things look pretty good for Reed. What other ways does Tyler actually have to win now? I mean, he obviously can cast Omniscience, but that's going to be somewhat difficult. Does he have any Cunning Wish targets that really kind of impact the board?
Not particularly.
Yeah, there's really nothing there that can help him.
Cast things the hard way.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to have to cast Omniscience, I think, now. Which is doable.
It's
a lot harder when Tarmogoyf is beating you down for 4 a turn, but So Tarmogoyf enters play. Tarmogoyf, I believe, is a 4 power. I think there's a sorcery instant. Oh, no, there's no creature, so it might be sorcery instant land.
Yeah, so that was a little risky of a target for the intuition. Probably a safe target would have been enter the infinite there. That's something which could have easily been surgical to little effect, I suppose. Then he can still Cunning Wish and just use Cunning Wish to find Emrakul. He doesn't actually have to draw his whole deck to win.
So Tyler here under a lot of pressure all of a sudden, out of nowhere.
Well, he just has to make land drops.
He has to make land drops. He has to make, I believe, 6 more land drops.
Yeah, he has.
Which is tough when you're facing a 3/4.
Most of the lands in his deck.
Yeah, he only has 19 lands. How many lands?
Well, a lot of them are fetch lands. He has 9 islands and then 4 soul lands. And 2 of those have been wastelanded. So he has a total of 13 mana producing lands.
So he only has 6 lands in his deck that actually tap for mana. 2 of them tap for 2.
Yeah.
So if he draws all of his islands, he still can't cast Omniscience, right? So he has to draw. He has to draw all of his islands and his City of Traders or Ancient Tomb.
Correct.
So it looks like we're going to get a Cutting Wish here, Tyler. He's probably going to let that resolve. He could find, potentially, is there a removal spell? Looks like he can get like maybe an Echoing Truth.
Yeah, well, he can. There's bounce. He has Echoing Truth where he could bounce it. For example, he has a Slaughter Pact, which he couldn't pay for, so he can't actually use that. He could Rapid Hybridize the Tarmogoyf if he's worried about it getting bigger. But even then, a 3/3 is pretty.
3/3 is pretty. It's the same right now, yeah.
And here's something which he may have wanted to use earlier. He does have 1 Noxious Revival in his sideboard. It's possible that if he was really worried about Surgical, he could have Cunning Wished for that before trying to Intuition.
Yeah.
And that probably would have been the safe way to play this.
So Tyler just passes the turn back, and Reed is going to untap, draw just another land from Reed. So drawing a lot of land here. Considering the deck only plays 18, he's drawing a fair share of lands here, but he does have the Tarmogoyf in play, and I think he might have a Misdirection in his hand as well. So
now my guess is that Noxious Survival is actually going to be used to put a land back on top of his deck. He can rebuy one of his soul lands when he needs to.
Yeah, so things still looking fine for Reed. Again, mostly just because those 2 Surgical Extractions did a lot of heavy lifting this game. And he does have Misdirection, Forcible, and Spell Pierce left in his hand. So things looking pretty good for Tyler. Although Tyler's plan it looks like he might be trying to get back that City of Traders, and it is going to be hard cast Omniscience. But I think it's going to take him a couple more turns. 5, 6, 7.
And he's got to be a little concerned about casting it. He cannot afford to get it wastelanded.
Yeah. So I think he has to preordain here.
Yeah, he agrees. He's going to go ahead and start off on preordain. Remember, just looking for more mana sources. He currently has 5 in play, up to 7 in his hand. That's 2 more lands. Tyler's got to be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, but I don't think he has time. Does he have time, though? That's the question. So he plays a land
he believes
here.
He kept them both on top.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, basically. So he needs to dodge a burn spell out of Reed. Reed's going to drop him down to 8 here.
Yeah, he hasn't entered the infinite in his hand. That costs 12. That's not really attainable.
Is Omniscience 9 or 10, I believe?
I believe it is 10.
I thought it was 10. It might be 9, though. I'm not sure if it's 7.
It
No,
is
it's
10.
7. I wasn't sure if it was 7 and 2 blue or 3 blue. So it is 10. It's 7 colorless and 3 blue mana. So it is 10 mana.
It's going to go ahead and Cunning Wish here.
Might be Echoing Truth. Might be time.
It's going to Cunning Wish for Wipe Away. Same idea, a little more resilient.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to resolve.
Yeah.
It's got split seconds. So it'd be just interesting if he has. Does he have another land on top of his deck? That's the question. Well, I think he needs 1 more, right?
He doesn't know anymore. He played a preordained top, keeping both top with 2 islands. Remember, he has 2 more islands in his deck.
So Tarmogoyf's going to come over. Tyler is going to take it, so he's going to drop to 5 here. And the interesting thing here for Reed, he actually shuffled away another Wasteland earlier in the game. So if Tyler doesn't draw a land, Tyler's going to have to just cast that City of Traders this turn, or play the City of Traders.
Now the difficulty is that even if everything goes according to plan, for Tyler, Reed still has counter spells. He has Spell Pierce.
Oh yeah, he's still got to fight through Spell Pierce, Force.
Spell Pierce, Misdirection, Force of Will.
It looks like that might be Ancient Grudge too in his hand. I think probably again he doesn't know what's in Tyler's deck, so in fear of Defense Grid. lot of Omnitel
Sure,
players
that is
board in the
a
defense grid.
common board card for defense for Omnitel.
So Tyler
Ancient
did
Tomb
draw it.
draw.
Ancient
All right,
Tomb.
so he's got enough mana. I don't know if he has Omniscience in his hand. I think he just has Enter the Infinite at the moment. He's going to play Ancient Tomb and pass.
Well, that could be good enough if it resolved.
Well, the 2 damage there is pretty real.
Yeah. So it looks like a valiant effort by Tyler, but I don't think he's going to get there, just given Reed's hand, but we'll see. Brainstorm from Reed.
Yeah, the danger.
Oh, there's a Wasteland.
If
Wow.
you go back, the danger what happened is on the first surgical, Tyler got his Dream Hall surgical. And there are a couple of pairs that you really can't let both halves get surgical. If you let Show and Tell and Dream Hall get surgical, you have to pay for everything. If you let Omniscience and Dream Halls get surgical, then you actually can't win anymore.
Yeah.
So once you have Dream Halls in play, you have to protect both those other 2 cards. Tyler wasn't able to do that.
Well, I think can you win with the Release the Ants? I don't think he has any red mana in his deck, but
There's no red
so
mana in
actually
his deck,
cast it.
so
So
he
yeah,
needs, he needs
you need Omniscience.
You need
or
Omniscience
Dream
for a
Halls.
Release the Ants win.
So yeah, Reed here look in pretty good shape. He drew a Wasteland.
For example, if you even if you get your even if you get your Dream Halls and Omnisciences both surgical, you can still just Show and Tell Emrakul into play if you can find him. So that there are still outs. The problem is now his out is hard casting these ridiculous spells, which I think against Rug Delver, that will never work. They have too much permission. If you're on the I have to Show and Tell Emrakul plan, that's weak because you only have 1 Emrakul and 4 Show and Tells, so it's, it's hard to find, but I think it's actually something that can work against Delver.
Yeah. So this Wasteland should probably seal the deal for Reed. And now the Tarmogoyf here, Tyler really just, he's going to hardcast, of course, now. We're going to, might as well Spell Pierce it here. Reed knows exactly what's in Tyler's hand from the Gataxian Probe, so no reason not to Spell Pierce there. He knows that he can't just cast Omniscience or Enter the Infinites on his turn. Tyler's going to drop to 4 from, he actually hardcast a Force of Will, so Reed still has him on a 2-turn clock. So Tyler draws a Ponder.
He's still going for those mana sources. See, Force of Will,
All right,
Ponder,
it's not
Intuition.
bad. That's a start, right? He basically needs Force of Will. Oh, I don't think he has
doesn't have
it.
the Omniscience yet, even.
He needs to.
He doesn't even have the card that he needs to resolve if he gets the mana.
Yeah, because I was going to say, without the Spell Pierce anymore, he only has to fight through a Force of Will, but he doesn't have the Omniscience or the land or the Force of Will.
Well,
so
he'd need Omniscience, Enter, blue card, Force of Will.
Yeah.
I just don't think he has enough cards to do all those things. He has
Intuition here, he can find it.
Yep.
But he doesn't have enough. Like, he doesn't have enough mana to cast it. He doesn't have a Force of Will. So he just doesn't have enough to do it in time before the Tarmogoyf kills him.
Attention Magic players, Ryan McGrath.
Yeah, so it looks like Intuition is going to resolve.
Yep. It's going to go for those Omnisciences.
So yeah, if he goes for the 3 of them, he can play the City of Traders this turn. If he draws a land, he'll be able to cast the Omniscience.
But then
unfortunately,
he does enter. He has Enter, but
it
won't resolve.
It won't resolve. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah. And Enter wouldn't even do it. He needs to cast Omniscience and then
he
cast
needs both. He needs to cast
Omniscience. He needs to cast Omniscience and Enter. Unfortunately, the Omniscience won't resolve. There's a Flusterstorm for good measure.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing. This game plan of casting blue spells, really doesn't work against anyone. There's some decks where it has, a small chance of working against. Because of the kind of disruption Rug Delver brings in, I would say this plan never works against it.
Yeah. So Tyler here, it looks like he's going to fall to Rug Delver. And Reed, despite having a really slow start, ended up pulling out this game, and I think it's largely due to the fact that Tyler just wasn't patient enough.
I think it's one of those unforced errors there. When your Rug Delver opponent has a hand like that, I think it is on the Omnitel player to try to capitalize on that. He did not. Tyler plays the deck well. This game was not able to play particularly well around surgical extraction and was punished for it.
And that's the thing. It's not a huge punt because basically you have to be wary enough of the format and Rug Delver in particular to know that surgical extraction, if he does have it, could be very difficult for me to win through if he gets my Dream Hall. So maybe I should slow play it a little bit more. And again, given the fact that Reed just had no pressure whatsoever, and you have multiple preordains and ponders in your hand, I think it's fine to kind of keep just trying to develop your mana base. But again, Tyler thought that Tyler obviously kind of just forgot about surgical